I thought it'd be really good for New York to have a debate and for the United States to have a debate about where are we going with this trend for radicalism. What good has it done for us?
A systemic problem for New York, an existential problem for New York. We are losing hundreds of thousands of people. We've already lost a district, a congressional district, perhaps 2-3 more.
New York once had 44 congressional districts. Florida had 6. Now Florida has 27 and New York has 26. So you lose 500,000 people because they've had enough. And then you lose 500,000 more people. That's a district.
They're losing districts. Right. They're losing tax revenue in the form of the middle class. They're losing jobs. The ripple effect is huge and it's lasting.
There's always a tendency to say that's not my job. Like, that's a state law. But hold on, it is your job. These are your constituents. You should be spending the majority of your political capital to support your constituents. Of course, some of it's for you because maybe you're going to go do another job, whatever. But you can't be so focused on your own franchise and not on what's happening in your district.
Hello and welcome to New York Insider. I'm Liam O'Neill. Today I sit down with Marty Dolan, who is a business strategist and the latest to enter his hat into the 14th district for Congress. He's running against the well-known AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Mr. Dolan, welcome to New York Insider and welcome to the world of politics.
This is my pleasure to be here.
First foray into politics.
It's technically my second foray into politics, unbeknownst to most people.
Okay, go on.
In 1984, I ran as a delegate for the Democratic Convention.
Okay.
I ran as a delegate for Senator John Glenn.
Okay.
So
you got your feet wet then. That was quite a bit of time ago. So you've just revealed you are a Democrat and you're going against AOC in a primary. This doesn't happen very often, and especially one who's so well known. Make a case for yourself. Why are you doing this?
Well, it should happen more often. I mean, everybody, we should have an energetic democratic system. I think that's what the founding fathers imagined. I don't think there's anything sacrosanct about running in a primary. I think it's what we're in a democracy for. So I don't have any problem with that. And I actually ran, I announced I was originally running against Jamal Bowman in the 16th district. And then they finished the redistricting, and it worked out that really the right place for me was in the 14th district running against AOC because she really stands for what I think is wrong with many important things in America. The most important thing is that the radicals, and I differentiate between people who are progressive, that's about progress, and radicals, is that the radicals are really tilting the Democratic Party too far to the left. And so the analogy I use is it makes the airplane fly around in circles instead of flying straight. So AOC is the self-proclaimed leader of the squad. And I already did, I had a good race against Jamal Bowman, and then George Latimer entered. And I think at the end, George is going to prevail there. Although it's up to the voters. We'll see. And I thought it'd be really good for New York to have a debate and for the United States to have a debate about where are we going with this trend for radicalism? What good has it done for us? Now we've had them around for 5 years since the 2018 election. And do we like the results? Is this something that's been good for democracy? Is it good for the United States? Good for the Democratic Party? Good for New York City? And I don't think so. I think the answer to that is no in all cases. But sometimes when you turn the temperature up slowly, people don't react. And so what you need is a decision point. Yeah. So on June 25th, that's what we're trying to create is a decision point, which is, do people really want to keep going in this system where the radicals are really overweight in their influence?
So we've got 2 months between now and that primary.
Yes.
And you're calling for a debate, so to speak, but it's kind of been difficult to get one so far. Tell us about how just a week or so ago, you wrote a letter to CBS, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't asked for a debate yet from AOC. That's really up to the Democratic Party in Queens and the Bronx to arrange. I'm assuming there will be a debate. I'm looking forward to it. As part of what we're trying to do. But a week ago, we were informed that AOC was going to be on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Now, I love Stephen Colbert, so I don't want anybody to think otherwise. And I love CBS. CBS is the network of Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite. It's a great business. But after observing what happened in the interview, which for the viewers of what we have here today, that's with CBS Entertainment.
Right.
So CBS Entertainment is not the same as CBS News. The difference is that when a politician goes on a news show, they're talking to a journalist who's there trying to portray the different sides of the story, whereas when you're on an entertainment show, the way the FCC rules, the FCC,
Right.
which is the Federal Communications Commission. Okay, so the FCC, when it was set up in 1941, which is about when television was coming up, they appreciated the possibility that incumbents in television could have a huge advantage. All you have to do is go back and look at, for example, the thread of the propaganda from Germany at the time, where the party in Germany then controlled the TV, and they, that didn't go well for the world. And then in the rest of the world, you really had TV stations that, you might have one TV station in a country or two TV stations in a country. And so it was very wise what the FCC said in 1941 was they said, you have to have equal time for politicians.
Yeah.
That's basically the way it works.
If there's a race, you have to if you give airtime to A, you have to give airtime to B.
Yes, if you're in what's called an electoral campaign period, which, when AOC went on Colbert, I was like, we're in a campaign. Maybe she hasn't been in a campaign for a while and she forgot how to behave in a campaign, or maybe CBS didn't look at it. But when you're in a campaign period and you're on an entertainment show, what the rule says, and this is to a layman, is that it should be equal time. So if AOC gets 10 minutes with Stephen Colbert, then
Right.
all other candidates, and by the way, she has a couple of Republican
Sure.
candidates, and this is meant to keep politics and entertainment separated. And go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. It's meant to keep them separated. It's meant to also keep a squishy, friendly relationship between the incumbent and the powers that be on the media waves.
It's meant to prevent that. Yes, it's meant to keep it. If I was being questioned by journalists in a panel, or if AOC was being questioned by journalists in a panel, totally fair.
Right.
You're going to get different results. But in this case, you end up with kind of what happened, which was it was a pretty softball interview. So we've written to CBS and saying, look, we want our equal time.
fair share.
We're very nice about it, and we're assuming that they're going to give it to us. And if they don't, then the remedy is we'd file a complaint with the FCC.
Complaint. Okay. All right. Well, let us know what happens.
We will.
CBS gets back to you. And have you asked the party bosses for a debate?
We have not asked the party bosses for a debate. I think it's up to, in the way it tends to work is that each county has their own their party. So it's really up to the Queens County Democratic Party to arrange a debate.
Right.
It's up to the Bronx County Democratic Party to arrange a debate. We're assuming that AOC will not want to debate us. That would be typical of her. We'll be happy to debate her, but we're not relying on that because in the case of AOC, everybody knows, I think at this point, who she is, what she stands for, and it's up to us to get the message out about us.
Okay. So get the message out. What is the top issue for you?
The top issue for me is the radical approach. So the radical approach is to take the extreme minority view, like extremely radical views that are popular with a small group of people, and try to try to make legislation that passes around all of that. Now, the problem with this is exactly the opposite of how the political structure of the United States is designed. So we are in what's called a federal republic, okay? And the purpose of a federal republic, and we don't have one Senate and one Congress. We have 51 Senates. If you take the state Senate, we have not one Congress. We have 51. Think about we have the Supreme Court, the regional courts, the state courts. This is all designed so that minorities cannot impose their will on majorities, and majorities cannot impose their will on minorities. And then change is negotiated very slowly and things happen in a very deliberate
So
fashion.
you think the shift to the left, the radical shift to the left, has happened too quickly?
I think it's designed to fail. I think
And it's designed to fail. How so? Give me some
if you're pursuing
specific example that she has used her megaphone, which is quite large, to veer things too far to the left.
Well, I think in her case, it's particularly bad because she's followed policies that are not only the bad policies, but the public perceives them as good for her personally. So the best example is the decision so Amazon was conducting a search for where they're going to put a major facility. New York was chosen. It wasn't a competition. It was already chosen, and AOC got in there and said, we don't want this because there's some tax breaks involved, and then we're going to have this big corporate employer in Queens. Now, this is a total head scratcher because New York's about business. Okay, New York's always been about the business. United States has always been about business. But even if you were a little anti-business, which maybe she is, although I don't know, the problem is it's terrible for the district.
Yeah.
And it's terrible for New York. So the reason it's terrible for the district is because imagine you're a 10, 12, you're a 14-year-old kid. Okay, now you're in Queens, and you want to get a job. And you don't want to get a job at Subway or at McDonald's. You want to get a job, like a job that will take you on the way up the economic ladder. So like your dad would work at the Amazon facility. Maybe your mom is working in the Amazon facility. Maybe they're in computer technology. And so you're learning this because the whole theory, if you look up the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the difference between black and white income and male-female income, is that there's too much of a jump. Like you have to make it so that people who are earning less can get a job that they can do, and then they can get a better job, and then they can get a better job. You can't tell people in Queens that they're going to go be cheese farmers in France. It's just not practical. So you end up with this. That's just in the district. Like these are the people that she's supposed to be.
Are you contending that Amazon was going to bring in, I forget the numbers, hundreds, thousands of very good middle-income jobs?
That's exactly right.
That otherwise were not available, and to this day certainly are not available.
That's exactly right.
And that she.
Well,
why did she cut it off?
She cut it off.
We don't like big corporations. We don't like tax breaks for Jeff Bezos at all. What were the other reasons she gave us?
I think those were the primary reasons,
Okay.
and I think it showed a complete misunderstanding of how business works. I think it really taught us a lot about AOC, which was that she wanted to be, seen as on an equal par with, Jeff Bezos and Bernie Sanders, and meanwhile, the people of her district not only suffered, but the future generations suffered, and it's worse because now. Let's say you're Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan Chase. And let's say, I think they have a facility in Queens, and let's say you say, well, now we're going to expand our facility in Queens. Well, hold on. Why do you want to deal with this? And if it isn't Jamie, pick whatever business you want. Let's say you're building a TV studio out there. Well, hold on. Like we're going to have to deal with some publicity here that's not so good for us. And now let's say you're Samsung. Now you're in Korea. And you're looking you can go anywhere in the world, and you say, well, we're going to put a facility. We have an important facility. We have to be more in the United States. Well, hold on. Maybe we're not going to go to Queens because we're going to end up being targeted by these radicals, and let's just go to South Carolina. And so you make things. It isn't that you're bad. You're so bad that you are making things worse permanently in your district.
Yeah.
So that's one
real head scratcher, huh?
It's a real head scratcher.
You're talking about a huge problem, a systemic problem for New York, an existential problem for New York. We are losing hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
We've already lost a district, a congressional district, perhaps 2-3 more. We're going to lose, by the next census.
I won't make this a quiz, but if you just go back in time, New York once had 44 congressional districts. Florida had 6. Now Florida has 27, and New York has 26. So you lose 500,000 people because they've had enough. and then you lose 500,000 more people. That's a district. Your district is 750,000 people. So now Florida is going to have 29 districts, and we're going to have 25, and pretty soon you're like, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and the same thing we see is happening in California. People just fleeing the state. They're losing districts. They're losing tax revenue in the form of the middle class. They're losing jobs. The ripple effect is huge, and it's lasting.
What you said about the middle class was important because
I think this is another one of your top issues.
Yes, it is. And if you read the report from Tom DiNapoli, who's the state controller, very solid servant of the people of New York. He published a report on this about 3 weeks ago. How the 500,000 people who left.
Right.
Well, they are exactly what you said. They're the middle class. They're $100,000 to $150,000 or $200,000, and they're described in the report. There are people working 2 jobs. They might have 1 kid, or maybe there's 1 on the way, or 2 kids, or something like that. And they look at their household budget, and they can't make it work. They're like, "What are we doing here? We're paying 14% marginal income tax rate. We pay 10% to New York State, 4% to New York City. Once you get into the higher bracket, a very high cost of living, and we're never going to get ahead." And so they quit. The billionaires, they don't have much income. They're going to get a penthouse in New York. They're going to be okay. But the real problem is then the jobs. So people talk about Wall Street, and they talk about the corporations. Wall Street pays about 25% of New York City's taxes.
Right.
And if they start to put back offices someplace else, if they start to let's follow our people to South Carolina, let's follow our people to Florida. Well, it's just a whole nother level of bad problems for New York.
Yeah.
So your representatives have to be in favor of your community. It's just, you said head scratcher. It's baffling to me why somebody would do that, except that in AOC's case, she got a ton of press, and the radicals were like, "This is great. We're protesting against
the machine.
Protesting against the machine." No, completely pointless.
What's another issue for you besides?
I think at the core of it, that's the issue, which is that there's a lack of constituent focus.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a good story about, I grew up in Westchester. My representatives were Elliot Engel, Nita Lowey. I was the driver for Congressman Peter Pizer, way back. But one of the best politicians in New York State is a guy named Paul Feiner. Paul is the town of Greenburgh supervisor. You probably never heard of him, but he's been there for 30 years. And if you go shopping at the supermarket on Saturday and something falls out of your shopping cart, it's practically like Paul is there to pick it up and put it in your cart. And everybody—
He's a man of the people.
Not only is a man of the people, he's there. He just is always around. And so there's some things he can't solve for you. If you got a flat tire, he's not going to solve it for you. It's not a dependency thing. But he's doing the first job of a representative, which is he's making himself available. He's invested in the community. And you feel like if you have a problem, there's somebody you can talk to, and he's going to represent you.
Okay.
Well, this is not the case with AOC, who is really, doesn't have any office in the Bronx. She has, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. The people there, they're like, it's okay. Like, don't come over here. And in Queens, it's worse because the immigration crisis. So the model of a congressional representative, I think, should be represent your people. That's the job, representative. Don't represent your views. Now, once you've done that, I think once you've done a good job representing the entirety of your district, not just a narrow segment of your district, I think then you earn the right to, give your opinion on other things. But I think until that's earned. That's not something that is automatically granted to every congressional representative. And I think she's come in and said, I'm just going to focus on all the things that are important to me. And, good luck, guys. And there's a few things that she gets for the district. But most of the time, she's just focused on, press for herself.
What could she have been focused on in these, I believe, 6 years she's been in office?
5.
5.5?
Yeah, we're in 5.5 now, more or less. So the Green New Deal.
Okay, how's that going for us?
Well, the Green New Deal sounds great. Everybody's in favor. We all know about global warming. don't get into whether it's true or not because we'll know soon enough. But the Green New Deal, there are aspects of it that are good. But if you were constituent oriented, you would have probably done things differently. So, for example, and New York is one of the most environmentally friendly places around because we all live on top of each other. When you live in a 30-story apartment building, you're keeping each other warm and cool. But the Green New Deal created something called Local Law 97. Local Law 97 requires that if you have a gas boiler, you have to replace it.
Right.
Okay, well, in some of these buildings, that's $100,000. As a co-op building and you're in the Bronx, and let's say you just replaced your boiler a year ago, and the people in the co-op are struggling because the rent is too high, because all these reasons, and now all of a sudden, and you have to replace that's not really being a good politician, because yes, if it's when Obama had cash for clunkers, that's a good idea. Like, give us your old car, we'll get it off the road, we'll give you cash, and then you put that. Okay, that's kind of a smart way to go. But Local Law 97 has created real problems because it just puts burden on the constituents. It's the opposite of what you should be doing. What should have happened is, okay, let's work on evolving there, because the world's not going to end if a co-op has a gas boiler instead of an electric boiler. It's more likely going to come from a coal plant or from the planes at LaGuardia Airport. Those are big polluters. So should there have been a transition period? Well, of course. Why not have a transition period? And these poor people, let them, when they replace their boiler, which you have to replace it every 8 to 10 years anyway.
So I mean, the Green New Deal is not legislation,
Local Law 97 is.
Local Law 97 is. 2019, New York State passes this tremendously aggressive climate act.
Right.
And from that, we have now Local Law 97 in the city. There are other laws that are coming down the books, both in New York and New York City. And guests on this show have said that the targets are way off, that the targets are going to be exceedingly expensive, and basically another attack on the middle class.
Yeah.
So some of this has played out, for instance, with Local Law 97, and you're seeing that AOC is not present in the workings of this. What would you do?
I think
to
as a congressional
scale some of these things back and make it more affordable.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a tendency, when to say that's not my job. Like, that's a state law. Okay, well, it's a state law, so that's up to the governor and the assembly. But hold on, it is your job. These are your constituents. So I think if you go back to the model, which is a constituent service model, everything's your job. And if you're well connected to the assemblymen, and you're well connected to the state senators, and you're well connected to the community leaders, and they understand that you've done everything you possibly could, you've used your political capital for them, and you're not successful, okay, guys, we tried. But that's not the case. So when we had
She's got a lot of political capital.
She has a lot of political capital, which she is squandering, okay? And that's another complaint, because if you're going to... Great, she has political capital. She's built a franchise, but it's for her benefit. She's using it for her benefit. She's not using it for the benefit of her constituents. Okay, you should be spending the majority of your political capital to support your constituents. Of course, some of it's for you, because maybe you're going to go do another job, whatever. But you can't be so focused on your own franchise and not on what's happening in your district. And you have to build relationships. So, for example, when they did the redistricting, which they just finished doing, there were state senators and assemblymen who were like, I don't want AOC to be my congressman. I want Richie Torres to be my congressman. Why? Well, because Richie really tries to look after his constituents. So even if it's not your job, even if it's a state law and you're the congressman, if the state senators and the state assemblymen don't really, lean into you, you're going to have a problem serving your constituents. And then, so you're going to get the endorsements, everything, but the results aren't going to be there.
I'm going to switch focus. Immigrants in New York, illegal immigrants, are quite a drain on our city's resources What's your view on this?
So I'll do the usual preamble. My dad was an immigrant, and he came from Argentina. He came up here legally to flee the Perón regime, and we watched, after I was born and grew up, we saw Argentina, and its demise. And so I understand the reason why people want to immigrate to the United States. And the immigrants who are here legally almost always are very conservative. They're almost they're hardworking because they're coming in, to a new environment. They left a crazy place to come here, and now so I think in the district, in the Bronx, and in Queens, I think the strongest support against AOC and for somebody who's for stability will come from the newly minted legal immigrants. The Dominicans, for example, are among the most conservative, family-oriented people, and they're, most people think the Dominican Republic, the Dominican Republic, you have to come here you have to go through the immigration process to come here. So again, you talk about political capital and where it's being used. So AOC has leaned into the idea that we should have open border almost. You can't say open border, but it's okay. We can handle them, and then.
I recall some images of AOC during Trump's presidency at the border. No such thing during Biden's administration, when we have a deluge of illegal immigration.
And I'm going to make a sharp point here, which is you have to be responsible. We talked about my role in managing the financial system of the world. You have to understand that when you beckon a welcome to people, we're open. You can come here. So now you look at civilian casualties. She talks about civilian casualties, but let's talk about the civilian casualties. What the police at the border say: for every 25 people who make it to the border, there's one that just completely disappears on the way there.
The deadliest land crossing in the world.
Right. So if you have 500,000 people who've come in, that's 25,000 who have disappeared along the way. They could be dead. They could be disappeared. They could be in terrible slavery. They could be, in terrible conditions. Those are civilian casualties that we and our policies are directly responsible for. So AOC is responsible, among the other radicals who are promoting this idea that you should fly to Ecuador and walk to Texas. Well, I had a quiz with one of my friends. I got a map. I got on Google Maps, and I said, well, what if I was going to walk from Ecuador to Texas? It's 2,200 miles. It's as far from Ecuador to Texas as it is from Tampa to Los Angeles. And there's no Starbucks, and there's no Cracker Barrel. There's none of that. So I think for the radicals, their immigration policies have been completely irresponsible. I think they have actually been an irritant to the existing legal migrant community. And then, okay, that's all before they get to the district. Now they get to the district, and you almost have to thank Governor Abbott from Texas for bringing this into sharp relief. So now the immigrants are here, and in the lower economic levels of the Bronx and Queens, and in Brooklyn, all over New York City, but I'm focused on the Bronx and Queens. You have food banks. You have community outreach programs. I was at one out by Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn the other day, where you're handing out food to people. They need the food. They're not. Nobody goes to these kitchens because they don't need they need the food for Passover. They needed the food. So, but then those resources are being diverted to the immigrants. Right. So what do you think is going to happen? Now you're going to have a conflict in the district where there's scarce resources, and nowhere in this is where Queens diversity, legendary diversity. Queens is the most diverse place in the world. Speak every language in the world there. That's where the immigrants are going, because they know they can find somebody who maybe is going to help them out and speak their language. Okay, but now you're a shopkeeper. Somebody is desperate. They don't have any money. They're stealing your liquor. You're taking a $60 bottle and they're selling it on the street for $6. Well, that's terrible. But it's not like some representative in California had this idea. This is your representative. This is who the person who's supposed to be looking after your interests is encouraging people to risk death and casualty and come here so that they can, compete for resources where there hardly are any resources. So it couldn't be a bigger disaster, and she couldn't be more responsible for it.
Rolling with Dolan.
Rolling with Dolan, right?
This is your campaign.
Yeah.
This is your campaign shtick.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So it came from my sister. So I come from family of 9, and we're looking at the map because the map of the district it's a crazy map. I don't think there's a map like this in the United States of a district where half is in the Bronx and half is in Queens. You have the 3 bridges,
which is on your jacket.
Yes,
there, right?
it is. If you want to put it there,
the
you can see
Triborough Bridge.
The Triborough Bridge, the Whitestone Bridge, and the Throgs Neck Bridge. Beautiful bridges. This is salt water, but you have a district that's separated by salt water, and when you get in the southern Bronx, below the Bruckner, you're on these points. So you have Throgs Neck, you have Clawson Point, you have Hunts Point. They're kind of isolated regions. Mm-hmm. They're hard to get to. It's bad enough for the people who live there, because also because of the way it's set up, there's no subway out there.
Right.
So they're not making a lot of money, and they have to have a car. They have to have a car because you have to get kind of up and then out and into New York. And so I was explaining this to my sister, and I was saying, well, where am I going to have my forget my campaign office when we win? We're going to have to have a representative office in the Bronx, and Queens is kind of the same way. It's not quite so much, but it's. So she said, you should have a mobile campaign office. So we're going to have a mobile campaign office.
Okay.
We're going to have a mobile representative office when we win the election, and that's where Rolling with Dolan came from. We're going to have a van, and we're going to go around because instead of the people having to come, we'll probably have one representative office, but we want to go out and be able to see the people in the shopping centers, in the stores, wherever they are. That's where we want, maybe it's in a park on a Saturday. We want to make sure that the people feel connected to their representative, so that even if we can't help them on one thing, they're going to know we're aware and we're going to try. So we're going to get the district rolling with that. And my sister Annie came up with that. So.
Marty Dolan, thanks so much for introducing your campaign and coming on New York Insider.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.